Is simulation theory a religion? We'll talk about it on this episode of the Mind Dog TV podcast.
Is everybody ready for the Mind Dog, the Magnificent Show? Start the clock!
And welcome, my friends, to yet another episode of the Mind Dog TV podcast. I'm Matt Napo. Thanks for coming. It's great to have you here, as always. Could go anywhere tonight, folks. I'm a little bit, I'm not nervous, excited, entertained by where we might go tonight. We're going to be talking about simulation theory. And as you know, I've tried for a long time to get somebody to come on to talk about simulation theory, including a lot of physicists who've written books about the subject. Nobody wants to come on and talk about it publicly, and I don't know why that is. Especially if you've written a book about, specifically about that, you'd think you'd want to hump the book a little bit and let people know about it. But I'm really curious about the subject, and my guest tonight seems to know something about it. Somebody I actually met, I believe, in a Facebook group about the subject, where I was looking for guests to talk about the subject of simulation theory. And I think he understands my frustration or my lack of ability to get any kind of physicist or somebody who really understands the theory on a real deep level to come on and explain it to me. I don't think he's necessarily an expert in it, but he's going to do his best to try to educate me on it and why he's a believer in it. And so it should be a very, very interesting program. Before I bring him in, of course, you know what's coming. I have to talk briefly about my sponsors. Tonight's broadcast is brought to you by audiobooksnow.com. Audiobooks, you know about the convenience of audiobooks. And I, basically don't have to explain that all over again. The audiobooks are very convenient. You also know that you can get them just about anywhere on the web these days. So why audiobooksnow.com? What makes them special? Well, the answer is simple. Price point, folks. Price point. Audiobooks Now Club Pricing Plan is simply the best deal on audiobooks you'll find anywhere. It offers the savings and flexibility not found anywhere else with their save on everything discounts, rollovers, exclusive offers, loyalty program, incredible selection, and cancel anytime policy. Simply can't be beat. Plus, get a free premium audiobook on select titles right now. You click the link in the description, and you're going to start a 30-day free trial. It's normally $4.99 a month for the club pricing plan. 30 days free. Absolutely free. If you're not happy, you just cancel it and you won't be charged a penny. But it gets even better with audiobooks. Now you save on every audiobook, whether you're part of the club or not. No gimmicky credits to hide the true cost. Much more, how do I say this? They're far less expensive than other places where you get audiobooks without even joining the club pricing plan. But the club pricing plan extends that even further. Again, the link is in the description. I appreciate you patronizing our sponsors, no matter how clumsily I read their ad copy. Now, also, if you're tired of hearing about the ads, you can join the Patreon at $1 a month. You can get all the audio episodes completely ad-free. It's a great deal. I would check it out. Our Patreon link is also in the description. On to the big program. Paul Oglebay is with me tonight. I met Paul, I believe, in a Facebook group about simulation theory. He's kind enough to volunteer, come on tonight and help explain it to me. And he has written a book called Turning Points, The Death of the West. I believe he's written that book because it says the author is Leo Pappas. I'm guessing that's his pen name. Anyway, please open your ears, open your minds, and help me welcome in Paul Oglebay to the Mind Dog TV podcast. Paul, welcome.
How you doing? Yes, that is my pen name, yes.
Okay. Because I looked up Leo Pappas, and the first thing I got was his obituary, and I said, oh, my God. I'm talking to a dead guy tonight.
I don't think I'm dead. So,
you look pretty good for a dead guy, I got to say.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, let's start for the dummies version, because my interpretation of this, and I've said it a couple of times, and I'm being kind of funny, trying to be funny about it, that physicists who spend their whole life and scientists who spent their whole life being atheists and trying to prove there was no God suddenly found a God, and he happens to be a teenager in his mom's basement with a laptop. Do I have it correctly? Is that what simulation theory is?
Exactly. We're done. I'll talk to you later. No. In a sense, I find that interesting too, because a lot of the simulation supporters that I've met are kind of anti-religion, as you say, and I always think kind of the same thing. I'm saying we're all saying there's some creator that has power over the universe and such. We're kind of saying the same thing. Like,
Right.
it's just call it God, call it simulation, whatever. I mean, the elevator pitch of the simulation argument you've probably heard, which is that, as computing power increases, we will eventually reach a point where we can create entire worlds, entire universes. We can simulate humans down to the molecular level. And at that point, we can create AI that approximates us. And at that point, when we're making simulations, there could be trillions of them. What's the chance that we're the original, right? That's the elevator pitch.
I don't know why they're shy about it. You got any insight?
I do not know. A fair number of the people who frequent some of the groups are a little, let's say, outside the box. So maybe that has something to do with it. I like to think I'm not too strange. Sorry, I'm making you nervous already, but
No. I can take it. Believe me, I don't know about the audience, but I'm excited about it. Not nervous about it, but to be honest with you, any subject that I'm not really too smart about or too well informed about will make me nervous having the conversation. I hope I can keep up is all my nervousness.
Oh no, I'm sure you can. Okay, so I started on it. I watched Scott Adams. Scott Adams, he's the creator of Dilbert. He has a podcast that talks about politics and persuasion and stuff. And he threw out the elevator pitch argument. And I was like, well, that makes sense. And I didn't put much more thought into it. I thought, well, we can't prove it, whatever, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And then what got me really into it is I just started seeing, just like overnight, seemingly, I started seeing just thousands of these weird, like 1 in a million type coincidences. Not the least of which was my book that you mentioned. So in my book, Turning Points, I wrote it in 2012. I have the copyright. I have a computer file. You can see it was last edited 2013. There you go. There's this guy, he ran for office. He was called Deplorable and racially insensitive. And there was a new disease outbreak that nobody had ever heard of before. And my mother called me one day. I had forgotten about it because the book never went anywhere. A few friends and family read it, and that was it. I literally forgot about it. And then COVID came along, and my mother called me like, you have to do that. You have to market it again. Like, you wrote it. Like, your character was like Trump and and COVID, like, you wrote it. And so I sent it out to agents again, and still no interest. And I was like, well, what am I missing here? Like, I wrote the future. And I just kept seeing these coincidences, and more the news would fit my book. And I'm like, that's really weird. And then I started noticing I would think things and then they'd happen in the real world. And I'm like, that's weird. And I started putting them on Facebook, and people were just like, that's odd. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, I believe it must be some creator, call it God, call it a teenager in his mom's bedroom playing a video game, whatever it is, some creator. So I was an atheist, and I now believe in some creator. I don't really care what you call it. You can call it Joe for all I care,
Yeah, I agree. I always say, my position is I think there is some intelligent force behind the reality we experience, but I'm not intelligent enough or well enough informed to guess the nature of what that being is. So I'm curious. I'll be forever curious. And I guess maybe if I die, I'll find out. I should say when I die, I'll find out. Maybe not. Maybe not.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I do find it strange when simulation people, poo-poo the idea of God or even get mad at like religious people. I'm like, but we're kind of saying the same thing, guys,
Right. Well, it's astonishing to me that you make the connection between coincidences, because this is something I've said probably 1 million times since I started this podcast, is I stopped believing in coincidences with the podcast. Now, here we go. This week, and as you know, and most people who listen to the podcast should know, when I have guests on, I allow them to pick their own dates. I don't say that, be on April, whatever today's date is, April 12th. I didn't say that. I basically say, this is what's available. Here's the calendar, pick a date. This didn't work out for you. We had planned once before, and we had to postpone it until tonight. Now, today I had a preacher on, minister, who is part of written a book about Adventist church, and that may seem like it has nothing to do with this, but we were talking about theology and the meaning of the reality that we experience. And then tomorrow after this program, I have a minister on who is talking about, he's written a book called Robotic Persons, and it's about AI and how robots are an absolute. This is a minister who's a theologian who is saying that robots are part of our future, and we need to incorporate a plan for social integration and think of them as persons. And at some point, they are going to have a morality and ethics. I think, well, that's kind of interesting, kind of ties into simulation theory in a way. And then I looked at the calendar, and my next guest is a guy who's written a book about AI and robotics, saying that we don't need to be fearful of, how of the fear about robotics and AI and intelligence bleeding into our lives. The fear is overblown, and we need to address it in reality, in terms of reality, and it's already here with Alexa and all this kind of stuff. So I'm thinking that's too much in one day to be a coincidence.
Right. Yeah, I tried to catalog them for a while, and it just got to be too many. Especially when you're looking for them, like I got into the mindset of looking for them everywhere, and it was just like 1,000 a day, and I'm like, I can't even catalog, and I just kind of gave up after a while.
So what about the coincidence, though, leads you to think it's tied to simulation theory as opposed to some other kind of force?
Well, I don't know. I am not saying 100% it is a computer program. I came to the conclusion that it was some creator, some all-powerful to us thing. And I thought simulation seemed the most likely, just given that we are getting more powerful, where, the theologian was saying we'll be able to create these AIs and have morality and such. And it just seems most likely that possibly within our lifetimes, maybe a few more decades after that, we'll be able to create things like that, right? Just with computing power, we'll be able to create things that think and feel like they are in their own universe, though we created them. So I was just like, well, that seems the most likely, but maybe it's God, maybe it's something we can't even fathom with our little human brains. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the problem. What can we understand? Now, I have a friend who, not really, somebody I know from online, from dealing online. I know I'm a fan of a couple of podcasts he's on. Invited me to his Twitch channel. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Twitch, but Twitch seems to be a place where it mostly occupied by people who play games and other people who watch them play games live, which is, to me, is a strange. But this guy who I follow, he doesn't even play games. He's doing a Grand Theft Auto, one of the versions of that, but he's not really playing it. He's just taking cab rides and hopping cab rides from one place to another and drinking and hanging out with his friends while he's taking cab rides. But it's I watched it for a while, and I said, this is as close to reality as I've ever seen a computer. I mean, it feels like you're watching a movie, not. But the question I have is, from that experience, right? That's a simulation that was created by man. But we see the actions. We're not inside the head of the character or reading its thoughts. So that part of it, we all have individual thoughts. Is that, in your mind, is that part? How does simulation theory deal with the fact that we have individual thoughts that can't be necessarily noticed from the outside perspective? I can see your actions, in other words, but I can't see your thoughts. Any insight into how they rationalize that and how they explain it?
Well, I'll tell you, in my life, I've noticed lately so many times when I've been thinking something that happened, like I'll just think of my ex-wife, who I don't think of often and who I don't talk to often, and then she'll call me. Right. Just yesterday, this is a funny one. I was thinking of a very attractive Black woman I had met on Tinder. I matched with on Tinder, And I was thinking about, I should message her. She's kind of hot. And when when I thought that, right 1 second later, some people at the grocery store said they were going to get some food that was flavored black cherry. So I was like, I'm thinking of getting some black cherry. And they said black cherry. Sorry for the crude joke there. But just stuff like that. So my thought, it seems like something is putting thoughts into my head. And I don't know. So I'll have things like that. And I'll think of song lyrics, and then I'll go by a restaurant with the same words in it as the song lyrics. And that sort of thing all the time. It seems like something is putting thoughts into my head.
Right.
And maybe I'm just noticing it. I've so primed my brain to notice those types of things that I don't know.
Right. Well, have you expressed that feeling to people who might be skeptical, cynical?
Yes.
And what's their reaction?
Well, I get one of two reactions. One from the people who believe in the simulation, hear it, and they're like, oh, yeah, well, that's how it works. And they don't even notice. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then the people who aren't into it just pass it off as crazy talk or as, they can't wrap their brain around it. So I don't get much of a reaction from either side, which is interesting. That
is interesting because I know psychiatry would think it's pretty unhealthy to think those kind of thoughts. It's almost like, and part of the diagnosis used to be for and whatever, and I don't even know what the diagnosis would be, so I shouldn't say that. But part of the pathology of thinking the radio or the television is specifically talking to you is kind of an extension of that, and they would say that that's it's a sign of schizophrenia, actually.
You could say it. I know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it is necessarily that. It's just, it has become mildly amusing when I notice something like that. I'm like, oh, there's another coincidence.
Right. No, I'm not saying I think it's schizophrenia. I would disagree with them because I think it's quite a natural thing for people to make those kind of connections, especially when things like, and again, I stopped believing in coincidences, but things that look like coincidence seem like overpowering coincidence. I think it's a natural human condition to kind of think those kind of thoughts. So I don't agree with psychiatry, but I know that's something that they, I don't want to say preach, but preach. And so when I hear that, I think, wow, for them to kind of just act nonchalantly, I'm surprised we don't see more kickback towards this stuff from the psychiatric community, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know. Well, maybe it has some more social acceptance because there are high profile scientists talking about it. Maybe that's why. I don't know. I agree with you. I hesitate a little bit to say it, although I just did say it live here.
Yeah.
For exactly that reason. And I don't think it is like the people talking to me. I don't think the people on the radio or the grocery store are talking to me.
No, I get it.
But I do notice the coincidence, and I kind of chuckle at it. I'm like, oh, that's a funny.
Yeah, and it's I would think if you asked a general question without saying it's about simulation theory or anything, just put out a question to social media about how many people have heard a song on the radio that had extremely important meaning at a time where it seemed like too much of a coincidence for that song to just be on the radio at that time. I think most people, I'd say probably 90% or more would probably say that they've had that experience. So there's something to consider with all of this stuff. I mean,
yeah, that happens all the time too. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So with interacting with people online about this stuff, I tend to kind of think, and it's wrong, but we kind of lump a lot of these things together. And so the flat Earth people come into where do you fall on that? Because I see them really angry about simulation, at least the ones I've talked to.
Really?
Yeah. They're angry about a lot of things, but this one in particular.
I do not believe in the flat Earth. I mean, I haven't looked into it that much. I've seen video and in my own life of ships coming over the horizon, as if the world is curved. That was enough for me to believe that the world is curved, round or spherical, roughly spherical. I didn't know that they had any strong opinion on the simulation. I don't even follow the simulation stuff that much. I believe in it, like I said, because I found enough coincidences that I believe that it was some creator. And I thought simulation seemed most likely. That's really the extent of it for me.
Right. But no, it's surprising to me that they have a problem with it too, because part of the theory is there's a glass dome over, and the sun isn't real. The sun is a light that the creator is moving around in certain ways. But the idea that because I think simulation requires a programmer, which means that we don't have free will anymore. You get and that part is off-putting to people, to think that everything we do is beyond our control and none of our decisions really matter then, because they've been programmed by a creator, right? What do you think about that?
Well, I know some simulation people do debate that. That was very off-putting to me when I started kicking that around in the old noggin. It was very strange, because it seemed like, from the coincidences, it seemed to me like I did not have free will. It seemed like it was pre-programmed, as you say, and that was very off-putting. But now, I don't know. I mean, it still feels like I have free will. It still feels the same. It just feels like I have accepted that there is something.
Right.
I don't think I don't think my view is that different from God, from how religious people have viewed things forever. But the free will thing, it was off-putting. I mean, when I was going through the
right. So what was your background I mean, prior to this kind of thinking that simulation theory were you raised in a family of faith or any kind of faith?
Yeah, I went to Lutheran church as a kid. I even went to school in the church for a few years. And I mean, they weren't super hardcore about it, but I was relatively into it. And I kind of just drifted away from it. No big traumatic thing. I just kind of drifted away from it. I considered myself an atheist as an adult. I was actually a devotee of Ayn Rand for a while. She was a super hardcore atheist. And I was relatively hardcore anti-religion for a while. And then again, I started seeing this stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't believe in coincidence anymore. It's something, like I say." And I just, I'm open. I'm open to God. I'm open to whatever. I don't believe in atheism as I previously thought of it anymore, whatever that means. So I don't know if you were hoping for a super hardcore advocate to.
No, I'm not hoping for anything. I'm hoping to actually learn something. That's all. That's my entire goal for all this stuff. Now, let's talk a little bit about your book. And first of all, is this the first book that you've written, or have you written others?
That's the first and only one. I wrote it back in 2012. Like I said, that was when I was big into Ayn Rand. Actually, I was trying to challenge her. So it has some of her influence in it, but I was trying to challenge her because when I was first getting into her, I didn't see what I thought were good challenges to her. So that was part of my goal. And it was partially to be a sort of empathy test for people. I had kind of extreme characters that people would either love or hate. And then the ending could change that view totally. So you could totally view the protagonists as having been good or bad, depending on how you interpret the ending, sort of thing. And the ending, well, the death of the West has to do with the disease. And the disease destroys the West more than the third world. And that's because the rich countries have been kind of pampered. We'd overused antibacterial, wipes and things of that nature, which is interesting given COVID and all that stuff. So my mom came up with that basic story. She was a nurse.
Oh, I just lost you for a second. You there?
You hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Okay. I was trying to pull the book out and I pulled you out. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Your mom, the last thing we heard was your mom is a nurse.
My mom was a nurse. And so she saw some people would go into the hospital for the tiniest little thing, ask for drugs for the littlest thing. And she said, man, the third world is going to overtake us because we're going to weaken our immune system so much that because we overuse this stuff. And she said, I should write a book about that. Like, that's a good book idea. And so I ran with that 20 years later, I was like, I'm going to write a book about that. And so I wrote it in 2012 and copyrighted it. And like I said, I couldn't get any agents interested and forgot about it. Then COVID happened and I was like, let's do it again. And I sent it out to agents and I got a couple little nibbles and most of them just didn't even pay it any attention. I'm like, but how COVID's happening? How are you not,
Well, to the listener, it probably sounds amazing. To me, I'm not that surprised because I've had other guests on. One who did a movie about the pandemic that premiered in it had its first premiere. It premiered it several times now, but it had its first premiere in February of 2020, right as COVID was spiking. And it was all about the pandemic and very similarly matched to COVID. And then I had somebody else who wrote a book about a fictional pandemic taking place, and they had to publish it themselves because company, and this was after COVID started. So I don't know why there's a reluctance to get. I guess maybe they don't want to feel like they're cashing in on tragedy. I don't know, but it doesn't surprise me that you've run into the same thing because you're the third in a row now. Very interesting stuff. So with the book, I did not find out about it until yesterday as we were talking on Facebook. So I did not put it in the description. Do you want the link in Amazon? It's available in Kindle form on Amazon. Should I do that?
Absolutely. Do you want me to? I can send it to you after the show, or
no? I have it already. It's here in the banner. I just didn't know about that, so I put it in the description, make it nice and clickable for people. There's a quick link that says Amazon, so people. I didn't know. Again, I didn't even know about the book until yesterday. I think you did mention it, but I didn't see the connection when you were mentioning the book. So I'm happy to promote it for you now, and I hope people will check it out. Have you had any success with at least getting some feedback from people, positive feedback about the book?
I mean, like I say, friends and family. I've been marketing on Twitter, and I mean, not that many people read novels nowadays. And it's the main character sounds a lot like Trump, like I said, and he's out of office now. So,
that confuses me to how your mom had to remind you, because to me, I don't think I would forget I wrote a book that sounds exactly like what's going on in the world right now.
Well, not forget, but I had stopped paying attention to the news, honestly, because it just drove me crazy after a while. Politics and stuff, it just was so, not to use an overused term nowadays, toxic. And so I didn't even notice the COVID stuff. It was early in the COVID stuff, as she called me about it, because she still watches the news like hours a day. And so it was early 2020, I guess. And I hadn't even noticed. And so she just reminded me.
Wow. So with the COVID thing, that's another part of this coincidence. Is the last program before all of this stuff, I had William Sargent on, who's a NOVA consultant, talking about the origins of COVID, and that it might have been here slightly longer than we know about, but he's concerned that it doesn't seem to be a natural thing. And we were talking about the lab leak theory and why the media was in a rush to debunk or call that lab leak false. And most of it probably has to do with because Donald Trump said something about it. There's no question in my mind. But other than that, I think there was some agenda by scientists who work in the field of gain of function research that they make their money off of this stuff. And the last thing they want to think is the work they do can be a danger to the world. And so let's not do that work anymore because they have a reason to protect that work. What are your thoughts on the whole COVID lab link thing, or is it a natural occurrence of a virus? Or you got any ideas on that?
I was big into what most people call conspiracy stuff for a while. I have heard that. I am open to it. I regret that I have not, like I say, it was just before COVID came about when I kind of stopped paying attention to the news just because it had caused such trouble in my family. I should get back into it. So I don't have any intelligent discussion on one side or the other, but I'm open to it. My parents would pull their hair out to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm open.
Do you see any conspiracy theory, since we brought it up, about related to simulation theory in any way, of it being like some kind of conspiracy or conspiratorial type of thing, keeping secrets from us? Any of that stuff? Oh, I think I lost. You just went black. Oh, there you go.
I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
You're talking about conspiracy in my
Uh-oh.
it's the CIA. Well, I was big into the surveillance state stuff, and I'll tell you, when I first started noticing the coincidences, man, I my mind went to that, and I was like, is the freaking CIA doing this? Like, what? I'm a nobody. Like, I am no. What the heck is going on? And there was one of the interesting coincidences. One day was I had a car accident a few years back, and I had a Scion, the rectangle cars, like the perfectly rectangular cars, and I was noticing these weird things, and I would talk about it in my car. And then one day there was another. It was a 2006 model, so it's an old car, and another, like one of the probably the only other one in my little town I lived in, had been in an accident. And I said in my car, like, oh, are you going to off me with a car accident or something? And then I was delivering for DoorDash, and my next delivery was for McDonald's, and there was a hearse in the drive-thru after I said that. And I was like, oh, what is going on? So for a while, I was like, it can't be that. But my previous CIA's out to get me mind would have led to that. And I was just like, what the heck is going on? So I don't see it. I mean, I think probably there's a mindset of the conspiracy people that would probably be open to the simulation argument, just because it's kind of outside of the box. And I think people who are willing to think crazy stuff would be more likely to get into it.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, I could see that. And also this stuff can make you a little bit paranoid. Now, this tends to make me think that there's something to what you just said about the coincidences and stuff. We know that social media and like Facebook and other ad agencies, because that's essentially what they are, have figured out a way to sniff your browser, see where you go, and present you with ads based on what your browsing history is. But where it gets a little funky, and that and people think they sound crazy when they say this stuff, is if I'm just having a conversation with somebody, and some people think Alexa or Siri is spying on them, and I just mentioned something and an ad pops up. But then even beyond that, there have been times when I just had a thought about something on Facebook, and all of a sudden I'm seeing ads about it, and it's like, that's beyond. There's no technology that we know of that can track my thoughts. At least I hope not. So that tends to make me think there's something to that. Have you had that similar experience?
Oh God, yes, constantly. Yeah. And I'll be thinking of something, and I'll have an email pop up, about that. Or like I said, I think of my ex-wife, and she'll call me. That sort of thing. That's the biggest thing for me that makes me believe in whatever, God, simulation, whatever you want to call it. But I can't prove that, because it's my thoughts, right? Like you were saying, so yeah, all the time I get that sort of thing.
I'm wondering if anybody in the audience has, if you're in the audience tonight and you want to write to me or come in and join the chat room and let me know if you've had that experience. I would think it's probably more common but it can freak you out. It can give you that Henry Hill experience where you're driving around and the helicopters are bad. And my God. Yeah. Like you feel paranoid about it. And I know it's happened to me, and at the moment I stopped to think, well, maybe I'm just letting my imagination run away with me here. But the more it happens, the more you start to think there's something to this. It would be great to have an experiment, to have a thought experiment. Get on Facebook, get on Twitter, and get people in a focus group and have people just think about things and see how the ads change and see if we can document something like that. Yeah.
One of the craziest ones to me was I had subletted an apartment that I wasn't supposed to have subletted. And I was trying to get one of the tenants out because she hadn't paid. And I was on the phone with her in a restaurant. I was doing DoorDash. And right as the moment that I said, okay, I'll give you another chance, there was an Amber Alert in the restaurant I was in, and everyone's phone exploded. Bleep, bleep, bleep. The nanosecond I said, okay, I'll give you another chance. And I was like, this was after a few months of the weird coincidences. And I was like, okay, I'll be like, okay, God, simulation, I won't give her another chance. It was bizarre.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you make sense of something like that? And I'm wondering, how do we make sense of that? Now, the guy I'm having on tomorrow talking about robotic persons, his book, and he's a theologian, and so you would think he'd be against this idea, but his take is it's inevitable. So how do we make the most of AI and what? And again, it's not specifically directly related to simulation theory, but in a way, all this stuff is based on artificial intelligence, and so he's talking about the three areas where it affects us: is work, war, and sex. And obviously war is a simple one, sending robots into war or but at that point we become God, right?
Exactly. My general view of simulation is that there was probably some original species, whatever, created by, who knows, God, whatever you want to call it, right? And that they created a simulation as kind of like a teaching tool type of thing to teach, show their history, psychology, whatever you want to call it, the history of species, evolution, however it happened, right? And then that simulation create another one, as for the same reason, right? So maybe we're some rough approximation of the original, and so maybe religion fits in. I mean, maybe Jesus was really the Son of God back in the original, and we simulated him roughly as he was. Maybe Muhammad, whatever, I don't know. With the sex thing, I don't know about that. I don't know how sex robots will fit in if we stop.
Oh, there are sex robots, my friend.
I know there are sex robots.
But no, they are more prevalent than you and I have, because I found out because of this program, because I had a couple of guys on, Zach Wiseman and Dylan. I'm sorry, Dylan, I'm forgetting your last name, but they have a podcast. Basically, it's called Two Nobodies, but the idea is they're a customer support line at a sex robot factory. And I was like, wow, and it's a 24/7 hotline. I was like, wow, that's strange that there would. A strange concept that there will be enough sex robots to keep a support line busy 24/7. So I looked into it. There are, I believe, 200,000 sex robots sold every month in the United States.
Wow, I had no idea.
200,000 every month. I mean, so do the math. It's 1.4 million a year. That's pretty quick population growth for sex robots.
It certainly is. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. So part of that, he's right about that. Will be part of. I can't imagine. Listen, I'm no prude, but I just can't. I just can't imagine how that would be a satisfying thing. I'm old, but.
It seems to me like it would be maybe a few times and then you'd get over it, like maybe for the novelty, like show your friends, like, hey, look what I got, and then get over it and want to go back to a human. But again, I'm getting up there too. I'm 40, so.
Yeah. So the idea that it's going to better humanity in some way. Are you an optimist in any way about the future? I mean, I know you have a child, and I believe one child, right?
One child.
But so you have to at least try to hold on to some optimism when you have a child, don't you?
You have to try. That sort of thing, I think, will go away. I mean, about the simulation and the AI stuff, I more and more feel like the old, get off my lawn, like the world's going to hell in a going to hell in a handbasket sort of thing. And I have to fight it increasingly as I get older, because I'm becoming that curmudgeon where I'm like, oh man, the world's going to hell, sort of thing.
Well, I was more of a curmudgeon when I was younger. I think as I approached 60, I started to kind of think, you know what? Yeah, I got to soften up a little bit. I was, but I think at 40, I was where you are now. I was that old. I was Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino there. Basically sitting on the porch drinking beer and screaming, "Get off my lawn!"
Midlife. Well, COVID hit right at my midlife crisis. I was already having major life issues for a couple years, and then COVID hit, and I'm like, "You're freaking kidding me." So maybe I'm getting past. I think I'm over the hump now. So
maybe. I started. I had my first midlife crisis at 20, and then another one at 30, and then another one at 40, and another one at 50. When I got to 60, I was like, yeah, you know what? I got to lighten up.
Yeah,
I should be thankful because so many of my friends are dead, and I know so many people didn't make it till 60. Just lost another one the other day at 59, I believe it was. So, you got to be grateful at some point that you survived. Now we're talking about origins and stuff. Lately, there has been an increase in information or perhaps disinformation around aliens from our Pentagon, from the United States Pentagon. Do you think that field of study has anything to do with simulation theory?
I think there are probably aliens on other planets. I think they have probably been to Earth. I'm not. That's not a hill I'm going to die on. I'm not going to bet my life on it. But I think probably. I think our government probably knows something. I've heard various theories about why they wouldn't tell it. Of course, the classic is that they don't want to freak people out. I've heard that. The Saudis don't, we have technology that would put oil out of business, and the Saudis blackmail our people into not doing that for that reason. Who knows? From a simulation point of view, why would you create this giant universe and not populate it with anyone else? I would think. Right. So yeah, we have how many stars? I don't even know. With how many planets? Trillions? I don't even know.
I don't think they can count. They can estimate, but they can't really say for sure how many planets are out there. But there are too many to think that.
It seems silly. Why would you have all that space and just so we can look at pretty stars in the sky? I don't know. It seems silly not to.
Right. Part of the theory, and one of the many theories, I should say, about alien stuff is that, the whole ancient alien stuff is that they came to Earth to speed up, jumpstart, or give a kickstart to evolution in a lot of ways and sped it up to the point. And now they just come back to check on us, which it does kind of play into the simulation theory in the idea that we're replacing the traditional idea of the old man in the clouds God, who made us in his image, with a scientific re-rendering of our thought process of what God may be. So I think there's that similarity between alien conjecture and simulation conjecture. You get that?
I do. Yeah, it's totally plausible.
Yeah. Have you ever had any paranormal experiences outside of coincidence that you can't explain?
Not that I'm aware of. There was one time I had a dream where I came up, like levitated off my mattress and saw a light out the window. And then when I woke up, for just a second, I was like, that was a dream, right? I'm 99% sure it was a dream. It was just one of those weird half awake, half asleep things.
I think that's a common dream. I've never had that particular one, but I've heard stories of that, the levitation dream that many people have. So I don't think I would necessarily classify that as a paranormal experience. I'm just trying to gauge, because
who am I?
Exactly where you come from and what it takes to develop the open-mindedness towards this. Because, again, I know people who, listen, I started interviewing paranormal investigators and people in the field 35 years ago, but I know some of them who are skeptical or cynical about simulation theory. And I think, well, that's so strange that you can be open to Bigfoot, you can be open to aliens, you could be open to the friggin' Easter Bunny. But if I mention simulation theory or matrix type of idea that, this all could be like a part of a elaborate computer program, that's puts you off and shuts down your open mind. It's just a very unusual phenomenon to me that people who are open-minded about most things get closed-minded about this.
That's interesting. And like, just as I was saying about the simulation, people hating the idea of religion, I'm like, well, why, it is interesting how people will be open to some things and not others. Now, one of the not paranormal, but I was watching Scott Adams again one day, and he's told about a recurring dream he had about flying. He'd fly in his dream and fly around, and it was great. But he said always it happened in the dream where he would tell other people, and other people would see him, and nobody would care. And they'd just be like, yeah, whatever, you're flying. And he's like, don't you see I'm flying? And then literally I went outside right after that episode and I saw a leaf spinning, floating. It looked like it was floating in the air. It was on a spider web or something.
Spider web, right.
But right after he said about the flying and nobody cared, I videotaped it. And in the video, it looks like it's just floating, spinning. And it's just another one of those interesting coincidences. That's not paranormal. But,
right. When I was a kid, very lucid and real feeling dreams. And I knew it was a dream, but I also felt I was in control of it. But the flying dream was part of my experience often as a child. I outgrew it at some point, and I'm nostalgic for it because I remember every time as a kid I woke up with that. I woke up believing in magic and believing I could fly at somewhere, and I knew it was possible if I could just figure out and get back to my dream and figure out how to make it work again. But at some point I grew out of it with the sadness that I'd love to have it back again. Looks like we have some comments. Let's see what somebody, Tina is saying, do I believe that God is an alien? Well, we're kind of trying to figure that out, Tina. I don't know. Again, my fallback position is I'm too stupid to know the nature of God. What is God all about? But I believe there is something out there, whether it's alien, whether it's a teenager in his mom's basement with a laptop. I don't know. That's why we're having this discussion. When did you first hear about simulation theory? Do you know?
When would that have been? Late 2019, probably. It was on Scott Adams. He'd mentioned it, and I thought I was instantly open to the idea. I was like, well, it kind of makes sense. But
do you know who Neil Bostrom is?
He's the first one he came up with in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of the physicists I've invited on the program, and he's gave me a maybe later. He's the closest I've got to maybe get, and I was so excited about getting a maybe later from him. And I'm hoping to get him on. I don't know why there's such reluctance or so many people are shy about talking about it on podcasts. Maybe they feel like the medium itself is not taken seriously, and they want to be taken like seriously in the academic world, and this kind of exposure is probably not good for getting their peer reviews up.
It could be. I mean, I'm not the best explainer of it. I'm not Neil deGrasse Tyson, right. I'm not Neil Bostrom. But
what do you do, if you don't mind me asking? What do you do what is your profession?
Well, right now I'm doing Grubhub. I have an engineering degree. I was an engineer. I got laid off. I lived in Las Vegas, and I got laid off in the housing bust of 2007 to 2009. And the housing bust hit Vegas especially hard, and I just couldn't find a job in the field for years. And I applied for jobs and couldn't for years, and then now I've been out of the field for years. So I recently moved, long family story, and I also have a paralegal certificate, so I've been applying for paralegal jobs, and unfortunately I finished that right as COVID hit, and I couldn't get certified because my test was delayed. And I've just recently gotten certified in that, so I hopefully will be a paralegal in the near future. For now, I deliver Grubhub. I'm
just thinking maybe we should bury this interview until after you get a job. Yeah. Somebody brought that up the other day. I was on Facebook, and somebody brought a meme, however you say it, and it basically when you go to a job interview and they pull up your Facebook page, it's like, I should have said some of that stuff in my
I don't know. I'll tell them. I don't know if they're fans of yours. I don't know if that would help or hurt if they saw the interview.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, you'd be surprised at how people you don't expect to be open-minded are sometimes, and people you would expect to be closed-minded aren't.
Change my name to Bob Schmidt or something. I don't know. Maybe though.
Or Leo Pappas.
Leo Pappas. There you go. That's
except he's dead.
Well, that's even more plausible. Then I'm totally not him. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have quite a few psychics. I had a psychic on a couple of days ago. Yeah, was it yesterday or the day before? Sunday night, I had one on, and have them on often. Mediumship. Does that entertain your thoughts at all? The idea of spirit world and spirit communication?
I used to. My sister talked about that for years, and I would poo-poo it very harshly in my mind, not to her, but. Back when I was hardcore atheist, Ayn Rand, I was Mr. Rational, like this, and now I'm like, hell, I don't know. I mean, that fits in with the simulation stuff. Maybe the simulation gives certain people foresight or just gives them story ideas that happen to turn out to be true. Like, I don't call myself psychic. I just wrote the book and was as shocked as anybody when COVID happened. And I was like, oh, I wrote that 8 years ago. I mean, not the exact thing, of course.
Yeah. Well, most psychics would probably suggest, people who use the term to describe themselves would probably say the book, at least, and again, I haven't read it, but from your description of it, with the accuracy down to specific words like deplorables and all that kind of stuff. And I think it was called the Black Plague 2 or something like that in the book. Most psychics would probably say that's a clear demonstration of what they call precognizance, seeing the future. But that's because they have a bias, I guess. But it definitely seems to suggest. Where do you think the message came from to write about where have you been politically active your whole life and involved in politics?
I was pretty hardcore into politics for decades, and I got out of it honestly just because it caused strife in my family, and it finally got to the point where it was like ripping my family apart, and I just got out of it totally. And I feel like I should get back into it now without being so intense about it, and I think I could. But yeah, I was pretty hardcore.
So, but tell me about the process of writing the book, at least from what you can remember. Did it take you a long time? And do you remember when you had the thought that I'm going to sit down today and start writing the book?
Yeah, I mean, I would write about an hour a day, every day, after I had done everything, work, chores, and everything else. And my wife at the time would go to bed before I would, and I would sit there for about an hour a day. It was just a very clockwork type thing. I meant for it to show how like childhood events would affect people later in life. So I wrote it sequentially and then flipped it around so that it starts when they're 25 years old and then it does flashbacks to when they're 5 or 10 or 15, whatever, and shows how those events matched what happened as an adult. So things, including the disease, had been years or decades in the making, but it seemed like they were quick turning points, sort of thing. So I had to write it sequentially for it to make sense and then flip it around so that, okay, they're 25, and then let me go find that scene that matched up with that and put it in this chapter as a flashback. Sort of,
right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And at the time you were writing it, you were still an atheist, right?
Yes.
So did you? So you obviously, probably, I say obviously, probably, that doesn't make sense. You probably did not have any suggestion at all that what I'm writing here is coming to me from someplace else other than your own thoughts, right?
No, not at all. Oh, here's the interesting part. When at the beginning of my coincidences, as I call them, I first thought of it as God, and I was raised, Christian. So I actually went and I got rebaptized as a Baptist Christian. I went to church and I found it very powerful and very comforting. And I got rebaptized in early last year because all these coincidences, they just freaked me out. And it was like, God knows all my sins. Oh my God, I got to cleanse myself. And I found it very comforting. Like I really do recommend church to people. Like I went from atheist to like, wow, I really see value in this. These people aren't crazy. Me, jerk atheist, not saying all atheists are jerks, but I was.
I've been everywhere along the spectrum several times in my life. I go from being a doubter to being a believer to being somewhere in the middle to cursing God to when life is bad and saying I don't believe in God, but still I'm going to be mad at God for this situation that I'm in. Every place on the map that I've been, so you can't name a belief or disbelief I haven't experienced. You know,
did all that in a year and a half. So yeah,
I can relate. But the thing is, sometimes when life gets overwhelming, that's when we see people, even people who, you know, they want to be atheists. They don't want to believe, but at some point when things get so dark, you have no other choice, and you lean back. And you know the old saying, "There's no atheists in foxholes." I mean, that's part of it. When you're scared shit, when you're shitting your pants, that everybody said, "Please, God, I just shit my pants."
Anybody, anything, please. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I thought today? So one thing we've discovered is man's greatest fear is not having toilet paper.
That's it.
I mean, think about how a year ago today, how people were freaking out about the prospect of having to take a dump and not having something soft to wipe your butt with.
First world problems, I guess.
And so it makes all of this talk seem kind of small when and here's the thing. I had friends who were going to apply to be on the show Survivor or Naked and Alone or any of these reality shows where they leave you on your own. And last year at this time, they were freaking out, ordering mass quantities of toilet paper, thinking, how am I going to get through this? Like, dude, you were going to be on Survivor, and now you can't think of a day without toilet paper.
Yeah. I mean, somehow, my psychic powers, I guess, somehow I just happened to buy a lot of toilet paper right before the rush, and I never experienced it. I just bought a few of the giant things, you know? And I don't know, my psychic powers, you know, so I missed that whole thing.
Wow. If I were you, especially since you're having a little bit of a downturn on the employment stuff, find somebody to bankroll you to go to either Vegas and play the numbers, or get active in the lottery pretty quickly, because it seems to me you do have some intuition going on. You have a streak of intuition. You might as well go with it.
I guess in October and November of last year, for about a month, I did a weird thing of month delay coincidences. So I would just take a picture of a weird thing that struck my interest, and then a month later I would come back. And every day for a month, there was some amazing coincidence. And you can see it on my Facebook page. Like a video clip of a YouTuber I watched would say, like, I'd put something that reminded me of the movie Eyes Wide Shut. And then literally a month later, he was talking about the election, and he said, everybody's eyes are wide shut. You know, that sort of thing, day after day after day, that type of coincidence. And I could catalog it. And it was really strange. I did play the lottery twice, just a couple bucks, and I lost.
That would be a cool social media experiment to get a bunch of people to do that, because I can relate to that. I've seen that happen so often. And again, I stopped believing in coincidences when I started podcasting, because so many times, I mean, things just line up like that, and it's like, well, that's especially in the era of YouTube when they're showing you video. But again, that's like the Facebook thing, where I didn't browse it. No, I didn't mention it to anybody. I was just thinking it, and now it's suggesting videos that are based on what I was thinking about, and that creeps me out a bit.
It is creepy. It's like, does Google have that much power? I don't know.
Google and Facebook, yeah. It makes you wonder. Well, I'm still curious, and I appreciate your time and coming on here and being a sport about this. And you know, you're the first person out of thousands of people I've talked to or tried to ask, you know, can you come on and talk about simulation theory? You're the first person to actually do it. So thank you very much for that.
That's really fascinating. I would be super curious to find out why. I really don't know why they wouldn't come on.
I've asked that too in the groups, and I never get a serious answer. The only thing I got from Neil Bostrom was that he was extremely busy with a lot of requests. I knew he just had a book out too, and I approached him as the idea that I would help him try to sell the book because I do have some reach. I mean, on the audio downloads, we're doing 100,000 per episode, or damn close to 100,000 downloads per episode.
That's
So that could help sell some books. You would think somebody who just wrote a book would want to talk about it to the public.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, and I hope you do well with the book. If you start to see any action on the book, please let me know, and stay in touch. You know where to find me, because if I come up with anything more on learn anything, I'll be glad to share it with you. And please, if you do too, come back and share it with me.
I will absolutely do that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for being on, and have a great day, a great night, and bye for now.
Thanks for having me. See you.
Paul Oglebay, folks. The book is called Turning Points, The Death of the West by Leo Pappas, which is his pen name. The link will be in the description to where you can buy the book. I hope you check it out. And if you have any insights or questions, comments about simulation theory, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, particularly about why you think physicists and people who are proponents of the theory are so shy about talking about it in public. That's our program for tonight. Tomorrow, I want to briefly promo what we got going on. Joshua Keith Smith, J.K. Smith, who is a theologian and minister, who's going to be talking to us about his book, Robotic Persons, about the personhood and what it really means, what personhood really means, what it means to be a human, and how socialization with robots will affect our future. The interesting thing about Joshua, when I Googled him just as I Googled, I got a lot of arrest records and stuff like that. So he was thankfully not among those people, but you'd be surprised with a name like specifically Joshua Keith Smith. Pretty specific name, and I Googled it and came up with a lot of people who weren't him. Anyway, it should be a very interesting program at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Let me take this banner off with the Amazon thing off. And so that's our program for tonight. Questions and comments for me, info@minddogtv.com. I'll see you tomorrow at 1. Till then, I'm Matt Nabo for the Mind Dog TV podcast. Thanks for coming. Have a great night. Bye for now.
Walk around that beat. What you wanna do, baby? listen to me now. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me now. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me now. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me now.